Welcome back to the Messie Missy podcast. In the umbrella of the Messie Missy world and building beautiful businesses through our messes, I'm inviting you to step over into God's corner. It's a new segment I've created. I created it recently. I created it because I sat in my new home, and a home that only could have happened by God's grace, by God Himself. And I sat and I prayed and I said to God, show me what I need to do next. Show me where to go next. And all of a sudden, I was empowered or motivated to start God's corner. And so it's the messages through our messes. It doesn't mean that when you're faith-based or when you're going to church or praying that all of a sudden God's going to clean up every mess you have and turn it into a miracle. It's actually very inspiring to have God invite God into the corner, into your world, into your business. Invite God into your business and let Him work through your messes. Let Him deliver some messages in the messes. And so I welcome you, if you're listening, to God's Corner with Messie Missy. That's me. I make lots of messes and I am a believer. And I'm somewhat of a newer believer. And I just love watching God work in my life. Crazy stories. I call it crazy good, crazy God, because it's like, you wouldn't believe this. It's crazy God. And the stories are what we're going to talk about in God's Corner. So I have a guest, Alex Zanardi, and it came about recently where Alex was kind of, no, I don't want to say stepping away from faith, but she was really questioning it. And then she has now a renewed faith. And it's not something that's like set it and forget it. Oh, I'm faithful today and for the rest of my life. No, because your messes really push you to the brink of like, are you kidding me? Another thing, another thing. So, Alex, welcome to God's Corner with me, the host, Messie Missy. But tell us a little bit about your renewed faith. And then the overarching theme is surrender. And I struggle with this so much. So, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm Alex from the True 180. I really am grateful that you put this platform out here. I think inviting God into any space and giving Him some airtime, we do struggle with that. We do forget. And the the loss of faith, I guess I want to talk about first, is really a painful place. Luckily, my experience has been this. Anytime I get to that space, I get like a tap on the shoulder, and it reminds me of a testimony that I had prior to whatever I was going through, that God came through for me. So sometimes easier said than done. But I know
Absolutely.
when I hold the steering wheel to my life, I can mess this thing all up. And I heard something be said, let go or be dragged. So you're holding on to whatever, say a car, because it's the best way to give a representation. You're holding on to this car because you want it to go your way, or that's the car you've always wanted, or whatever. And the car is not your car, that's moving. So it's let go or be dragged. And we obviously know that there's far less pain and sleeplessness and all of that in letting go. So, what I've found, especially when my faith has been tried, which is God, by the way, God wants to strengthen our faith, but all you need is a mustard seed of faith. So, I want to give two examples today, two testimonies. One is about my business. So, it doesn't have as much of, to me, it does, but that's because it's my story, as much of a potency as the second part of this, because that's a lot more. I will give a trigger warning right now, a lot more depth to that, but I feel like the harder and the more painful it is, the greater the testimony. So I'll start with my business. I've been on the Messie Missy podcast
No,
before.
it's like when you said the greater it is, the more painful. And it's like, it's why my mouth went up because we don't want to live in pain. right? But it's some of the biggest faith-based testimonies that come through the pain. So sorry to interrupt with my facial expression. I'm not a poker player.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I think having different perspectives on this is so important. So I had shared a little bit on Messie Missy's podcast that I own the True 180, and the True 180 is a life strategy coaching program backed with a lifetime of wellness, you know, kind of experience that I've had. So I started a second business and I put it on a vision board 10 years prior, and it's called The Mix. I always felt like art, beauty, and wellness should be sphered together. Great referral partners. I wanted something not traditional spa. I was kind of tired of that. And I have a little bit more edge to me. So The Mix was something that I wanted to create. And by the grace of God, doors swung open. The space that I'm in became available, and I have 4 rooms. And right out of the gate, I had all rooms rented. It was a success. Businesses were growing. It was exhausting, but I kept praying, kept the faith, and I did bring God in when I started The Mix. I brought one of the pastors from my church in to bless the project and bless our space. Thank you, Pastor Brenda. So I knew that it was a God thing, but obviously that faith gets tested because business is not, predictable. You don't know. So all at once last July, all the businesses, with 3 out of the 4 businesses moved on. One decided to downsize. One blew up so big that she opened in the town. She had to expand. She needed bigger space, which is what we love. That's what The Mix is built on. But it's unforeseen. All of a sudden, I have this space that I've created, and I believe that God's hands on it, and it seems to be failing. And, for me, when you work that hard at something, it can really hit you in the gut. And like we've talked about before, I immediately was like, okay, I need to do this. I need to strategize. I need to pump out more marketing. I need to talk about it endlessly. And I did that, and it didn't work.
So
And
would you
then,
say that was your be dragged moment?
yeah, I was definitely like, I have to do it this way, and I have to get it done. And I always say to myself, it's difficult to sometimes apply it. I always say, you can take my advice, I'm not using it, but it's, be 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 stubborn with the vision, but be flexible with the plan, because God's plan's way better than ours. So yeah, I was being dragged, and I was exhausted, and I wanted to give up, and I was like, I'm gonna go set up a massage table in my spare bedroom because I'm tired. And I had survived so much at that point that I'm like, maybe that is what I'm being led to do. But I stopped for a second, and I thought to myself, God's pulled me through some really tough stuff, and I have my hands all in this. Let me just let this go. And something I have a hard time with is personal relationships, because I'm always working and busy, busy, busy. So I'm like, you know what? Let me focus on some of my relationships and just letting go. And, I went and did this speed dating thing with friends just for fun, and, reconnected with some people that I hadn't talked to. And then, boom, I had 3 renters. Like, it was literally, I got one in August, one in September, and then, there was another test of faith getting my 4th room rented, but now we have a great renter that just came on, and it wasn't due to any of my marketing. She didn't come. She didn't come because she heard about me through social media. She just had heard about The Mix from somebody about 4 months ago, and now she's ready to launch her business. And yeah, I didn't have anything to do with it. Despite all my hard work, it was still God that did it. And I let myself be dragged. But as soon as I said, you know what, I can't control this. I know for sure that if it succeeds, it's because of God. If it fails, it's because I'm late to the next thing, and that's still God. So that's like
incredible.
It's like that's the recent thing. And I really don't love to say that all testimony has to be based on pain, but like some of the most impactful, right, Missy? Like most of the impactful stories that you have to share are the ones that really give faith to other people. It's so powerful that it can't be denied that it wasn't just me. And one of those moments for me was after a long struggle with mental health. I had lost the business because I burnt out, and I was actually living at home with my mom at like 30 years old. And I went to bed and I was done. I was Googling how to commit suicide. I wanted to know what the least painful way to do that was, because I felt I had felt so much emotional pain. I didn't know if I could handle any physical pain. And I went to bed and I woke up the next morning with more joy than I've ever felt. Like, there's happiness and then there's joy. Happiness is contingent on something going your way or you getting what you want. Joy is a different emotion and you can feel it at any point in time, but I've never felt it this intense. I was re-inspired. I was motivated. I had energy. I like got up and went to the gym, which I hadn't been to in weeks, if I remember correctly. And then I pushed forward, and it was this moment that I was like, oh, now I know God. And I've always had a faith base. I've always, you know, considered myself very spiritual, and I've explored all theology and all different practices. And I have, I'm open to all. I love that people are believers in whatever they're believers in, because it just lets them know that they're not alone. But that was the defining moment when I knew God. And I knew
Wow.
that even if I lost faith again, because the first story was actually more recently, if I could just remember that mustard seed, that one time that he came through for me in that intensely powerful, real, palpable way, if I could just remember that, then I could give it to him again. And that really has changed the trajectory of my whole life. All I can do is what I can do, and then I have to let it go.
Yeah. Yeah. So many people out there listening will just appreciate your story. I'm just sitting here in awe. And let go or be dragged. It's something that's just, sticking with me through this. Thank you for sharing that. I think the biggest thing that I get from this, and the thing that I continue to struggle with, is the surrender. Can you talk to us? What do you think what comes through as a message to the audience about surrender for you?
That you have far less control than you think you do. And I
Yeah.
think we all struggle with control. I mean, I'm in
Yeah.
business, so I'm the boss. I'm the boss a lot in a lot of arenas. So just like any other addiction, have become at times addicted to control, and it's ruined relationships. It's definitely severed my strong connection with God at times. So if you want to surrender and feel the peace of what surrender feels like, you have to look at your control issues. You have to look at why, because generally we try to control things because we live in fear. Like, I was controlling my business because there was a financial fear. I was controlling in relationships because I was worried about losing those relationships. But that really just stems from an unworthiness in me. There's always a deeper meaning. But when it means a lot to you, it's really hard. It's a practice to let go of control. But that's where faith is right there. And that's where the testimony supports it, right? Because you make it through something and you know that it worked that time. So chances are good that this is the way to,
Right.
to forfeit the control. And then you are going to forfeit the road burn of being dragged. And now you know that he's working in your life because you're not.
So let go or be dragged. I mean, we need to make a t-shirt. Let go or be dragged, and some tire marks on it, and like give it to God. And it's so simple, but so hard to do.
It is.
And
It is. The piece of advice that I would give anybody is to look at fear, you know, and face everything and rise is what it is. You know, fear is mental. So whatever you're afraid of that you think will happen if you release control, look at that, because you can let go and surrender, and you can be working on the thing that's going to empower you. You know, if it's my unworthiness in relationships that make me cling and control, then I can look at that. That's something, because faith without works is dead, right? So I still have to do my part. I still have to do my
okay,
part.
okay. This is crazy God. Like this is when it comes alive for me. I have to say, while you were talking, this is how God works in my life. This is exactly why I had to start God's Corner, for this exact reason. He just did it. Okay. You were talking, I can't make this up. And I say it to my girlfriend all the time because we came up with the crazy God, because we talk to each other. We're like, you won't believe this. So you were talking, and I was thinking, faith without works is dead. Faith without works is dead. The whole time you were talking. So I had to look it up because I needed to get that Bible verse exactly from where it was. While you were talking, I wrote it down. It's James 2, verse 17 through 26. Faith without works is dead. And that is how God, I mean, you just saw it. Your testimony is so important. Thank you for sharing it. But it's so true that like God brought us together. I will always say that. And one of the first things I said to you in your office, I do remember this. And for new listeners, I've had so much trauma that I have some pretty severe memory loss. I hope to get through that soon. But I don't remember a lot, but I do remember when we sat down and I had taken your pamphlet. Somebody had referred us together. And the one thing I noticed was there wasn't anything faith-based on your pamphlet. And I was like, okay, I'm going to give her a chance. I'm going to give her a try, but I really wanted to work with somebody faith-based. And we sat in your office, and do you recall how it came up?
I think it was because I had a cross in,
Okay.
in my room. I had a cross in my room, and we, I think I just said, you know, this is going to be foundational coaching built on faith. And you're like, you kind of lit up, and you didn't do a lot of lighting up when we first met, but you were like, oh, okay. So and I was like, yeah, I mean, if I do anything without that being the foundation, it doesn't work out, and it doesn't feel right. And I could usually muscle through it, but why? God can do that.
Right. And so I was so excited when you did, qualify that you were faith-based. And I was like, oh, you got to put that on your pamphlets. And I know you will whenever the time is right, but God brought us together. I always believe God nothing happens by mistake. And even in the most painful, biggest messes. And I really appreciate you sharing the trigger warning / suicide story, because people out there need to know they're not alone. That's the biggest thing that keeps coming up for me through my messes. The messes make you feel so isolated and messy, and you are alone. But first of all, you're never alone with God. I mean, God is always there. But God will put people in your life like Alex. Like the part of the country where we met isn't hugely faith-based, or they're not outwardly like faith-based, would you say?
Yeah, I would definitely agree that we're not as candid with our spiritual path. You know, people don't talk about it as much. And actually, in business, marketing wise, it's discouraged to speak about, you know, obviously politics, religion, and whatever. And that's not why I don't market, because my personal platform, I do put a lot about my faith, even the church that I attend and all of that. But I do believe that God puts the right person in my office. He'll put the right person on my table. He'll put the right person in front of me. And because God and I have that closeness, I don't feel like I have to market that as much as I have to live in that. I have to walk in that. And I have to say, I'm a sinner. I'm just, because Jesus didn't say, come to me when you're perfect. Jesus said, come to me flawed and we'll walk through this together. I'm not quoting specific, but that's basically
Yeah, all who
what,
are weary or lost is another, when Jesus invites you in. I mean, I love that. I love that that whole purpose behind you don't need to put a cross or a infinity sign or sorry, a fish or whatever it is to identify that you're a believer and do business with me because I'm a believer, that you don't need that.
right. And I think another thing that's really important when you're marketing yourself, some people haven't stepped into their faith yet.
Right.
And may even be afraid of it or turned off by it, but you could be the liaison. You could actually be set up by God to be the bridge. So where something could look like it's attractive, it could almost repel the people that need to come. So like
Absolutely.
very relatable.
Absolutely. I mean, people, if you go through, I just want to share the one thing that came to mind because God keeps telling me kind of the message in this was, it went off of what you were saying earlier, a little bit not relevant, but I remember one day going to church. I go to church every Sunday. I did. I need to get back. There's a whole thing there, but I was there. I was living through one of the biggest messes. It had to do with lawyers and a crime and federal prosecution. It was not me. It was somebody very close to me, and I was living it and going through it. And we went to church every Sunday. I was there one Sunday and I was so angry, so angry with God. I went to church and I'll never forget. And I don't know what all this means. So maybe this is not meant for me. Like maybe this is the message here for somebody else listening. I sat in the pew and I didn't move. And this is a church where there's worship music and there's a lot of movement and praying and you're up and you're down and and it's a participating church. You don't just, show up, and it wasn't Catholic mass. And I just sat there with my Bible in my lap. I didn't open the Bible and I refused to do anything other than say how angry I was with God, because why was he doing
Care.
this?
God doesn't care if you're angry with him. God doesn't care because as long as you're still coming to him, that's it. That's the faith. Like you said, you're sitting there defiant like a 5-year-old. I'm not participating because I'm mad, but you still came. So God
Mhm.
doesn't care what a mess we are, how angry we are. All he cares about is that we're still showing up. We're still saying, I still want a relationship with you. And that's what we need to do in our regular relationships. I'm mad at you, but I still have faith in this. So I'm going to still show up, even if I'm angry or pouting or being in my attitude, in my 5-year-old self. I'm still showing up. I'm still here and I still believe in this.
I've never shared that with anybody.
I love that. And I love that you just shared a piece of what you've been going through too, because I know, a little bit of your story. I'm honored that you felt safe enough with me to share that. But I know it's been difficult and you're doing all these other amazing things, putting platforms out there to help other people. So,
Yeah.
the fact that you are doing that for other people, I'm glad the healing's happening for you.
Yeah, it's in the sharing. I think for me, it's in the sharing and the movement that my healing is it's like a little mustard seed sometimes. Or for me, I call it a piece of sea glass. I will find, because I collect sea glass, I will find the tiniest speck of sea glass. And that's all I needed for God to show up, to keep going, for his sign for me. And so for me, it's faith the size of a sliver of sea glass, because it's really hard to find it. But when you get that sliver in your hand, you know it's a sign for me from God. Keep going. You're on the right path. It may not feel like you're on the right path. Keep going. And like you said, faith without works is dead. And we talked about, I've got hope on my shirt. We talked about faith. We talked about hope. We talked about the works part. And that's something I always cling to, is that scripture, because you can believe all day long, or you can have a little bit of doubt and still believe, but you've got to work, you've got to move, you've got to work, you've got to put something in. So if you go back to let go or be dragged, the letting go part doesn't mean stopping work, right, Alex?
No, you gotta continue on. And when I've done all I can do, and I know, I'm still grounded in reality, when I'm like, you know what, I can't do this. I'm exhausted. I know whatever this is, I can't do it. I have this little thing that goes through my mind. I can't. If I believe in a God of miracles, I know he can. And then I'm like, I think I'll let him. It's like a process of letting go. It's I can't, he can, and I think I'm gonna let him. Because that's my relationship with God is real. I yell at God, I have an attitude with God, similar to your church experience. So it's kind of like, that's like the 14-year-old in me. Like, I know I can't do this. I stubbornly want to do this, but I know I can't do this, but I know somebody who can. Can I let go of my pride long enough to say, you know what? I think I'm going to let him. I think I'm going to let this person help me, like in real life stories.
Mhm.
But through those people, I'm going to let them. And just like, you know what I mean? Like God sends people to us to help us.
Mhm.
So when I think I know better and I can do it better, you know what? I'm going to let them, because I've identified that I can't, and I'm not doing this well or gracefully. And I know somebody who can. I'm going to let them. I don't need to
Wow.
be the boss. I don't need to be the best. I don't need to be the one. I don't need to be, the elite. Life has knocked me down enough times. I've been humbled enough times. And as long as I can remember, somebody else can. So maybe I'll let them.
What do you think when you went from literally wanting to end your life, and that night, and the Googling and going to sleep, what do you think happened to wake up with that joy? Like, somebody out there is listening, and even me, I'm in awe of that. I've been I've been at that point before, and I have a why right now that is strong enough to keep me going, that God has blessed me with two incredible teenagers. That's my why. But for somebody who's listening out there, that's like, great, faith, hope, love, all that sounds good. But they're really struggling, like I've been, like you were. What
Mhm.
happened that got you to the joy? I want that level of joy, quite honestly.
Well, I think some of it is, it's the magic of it. It's the miracle of it. But what I will say is that it was it was relief. So no, being in so much pain and knowing that there is a way out, it's a man-made way out. They say it's the cowardly way out. But there
Um,
was still relief in knowing that if I wanted to pick this up and handle it my way, I could, that it was an option. That's how much pain I was in. I had been tried and tried and tried, and my heart had been bruised, and the people that I reached out to were further hurting me, leader abuse and all of that. And nothing kills your pride than having to move home with your mom sometimes. And we've all been
huh.
there, and why, but it was more than that. It was a soul sickness. I was dead. I felt dead inside already. And that's how deep and tragic that moment was. But I think what happened was knowing that I could, but right before I went to bed, knowing that I wasn't going to, and then
Wow.
sleeping. Sleep is the ultimate surrender, right? Like, I could have,
Mhm.
um, done something that night. I could have, but I think what happened is there was enough relief in knowing that there was a way out. But now that I'm more firm in my faith, I know that there's a way out of that pain without it being suicide. Now I know there's a way out of that pain by just loosening my grip on whatever it is because it provides relief. One deep breath when you're going through it, when you're having a bad day or sitting in traffic or whatever, one deep breath will provide you enough relief in that moment because that's what we want. I mean, that's what suicide is. Somebody wants relief from their pain. And there was enough relief in me in knowing that I could, and maybe I won't, but I could if I wanted to. And then going to sleep is releasing all the control. But I do believe that my God and I have a close enough relationship that he knew I was close to the edge, and whatever he had to do, it needed to be profound, and that it was going to be a testimony, and that 10 years later I'd be sitting here talking about it and giving other people permission to talk about what they need to talk about, not feel shame around actually having felt suicidal or depressed or anxious. There's a lot to be said about what stays in the dark grows there and festers there. We need to talk about it. And I know mental health is a big topic right now, but we need to talk about, like, exactly what you're asking. We need to talk about the testimony. We need to talk about, because when you're in depression, sometimes you can't even shower. You don't want to get out of your bed. You are numb, paralyzed. So we need to take the shame out of it so it opens communication for connection and faith, and that people can push through. And the message will always be you are never alone. You can reach out to me anytime. There's zero cost. I put this out right after the election, and I've put it out a couple times before that. If you're in a place like that, there is no charge or obligation to reach out
Mm.
to me. I'm real life, doesn't matter who or how many people I'm working with. The true180.com, go on there, send me a message, SOS me, and I will get on a call with you as quickly as I possibly can. You are never alone.
Yes. And I think we can kind of bring this full circle. That is the message of this segment. That is God's Corner today, is that you are never alone. It's been the cornerstone of me building several of my businesses. The first one after divorce, it was about curing loneliness through divorce, that you wouldn't be alone, right? And now we're all the way over to the True 180 and Messie Missy's podcast and building beautiful businesses through our messes. And we have two female entrepreneurs here who happen to be faith-based, who are sharing our real life testimonies. It's ugly. It's messy behind both of our, whatever you think we look like, sound like we're put together. We have messes, but the message is you're not alone. And we've both fought depression, suicide, the darkness. I think maybe more recently me than you, but this is not like a contest of whose darkness prevailed longer or more recently. It's definitely not that. But I've been through the same thing. Some days are really, really hard to put. I just talked about it in a reel this morning that I made, to put 2 feet on the floor, to get moving. Some days are really that hard. Maybe it gets easier. Maybe it doesn't. It's all messy, but you're not alone.
No, you're not alone. You're never alone. Even if you choose to be physically alone, you're not alone. Even if your faith is, you don't really know where that is or what God you believe in or what, philosophy you follow, because it doesn't matter. Like, to me, it doesn't matter. And I know a lot of religion does really emphasize that it's like blasphemy or what, like, if you look at other ways to practice your faith. I do not subscribe to that.
No, I don't either. I simply want to share my testimonies of truly how God continues to show up in my life. And I absolutely still have my little anger fits or I don't want to say I ever doubt him. I do go to another Bible verse where I completely say, why? Like, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to endure this? Why now? Why me? That's a whole nother segment, a whole nother God's corner. But the message through this mess today. Thank you so much, Alex, for your authenticity, for your showing up, for everything you're doing with the True 180 and helping people. And I hope you guys have enjoyed this segment. It's been dark, but now we got to go stick our heads out into some sunshine and find some light. We truly, the two of us want to help people. I think that's our backbone and our foundation is truly being here to help people, and through God's grace and through God's continuing to wake us up and bless us every day, we can do that. So remember, faith without works is dead. You have to work through the hard, through the messy, and it's worth it. It is worth it. So you can see my hesitation. I still question whether it is worth it, but that's the point of this. I want to hear from you. I want to build a beautiful community through our messes. Reach out to Alex if you need her. I am built from that same cloth of 24/7. If people need me, I will be there for them. And Alex has been there for me through many times. Just you do have to reach out to people, because you can't do this alone. You can't do this life alone, and you're not meant to. And God's put us here and together, and it's not by accident. Thank you for listening.
It's not going to always be pretty. We'll come on here with our messes to give you permission to have yours.
All the time. Lots of great testimonies, lots of great messes, and how he or our faith or our works have got us through it all. So thank you so much, Alex. I hope you've enjoyed God's Corner with Messie Missy, part of our Messie Missy community. We're building beautiful businesses through our messes. We are sharing our messages through our messes. Leave a review. Share this with somebody. Maybe this struck you, but you really feel called to share this with somebody else. We truly want to help, and join the Messie Missy community. And we will see you on the next God's Corner when he so moves us. Thank you again, Alex, and thank you all for listening. Share. We look forward to hearing from you. Give us a review. And until the next mess, through the message. See you then.